Welcome everyone to our session today. So I might ask Lou to kindly lead our prayers. Thank you, Lou.
Taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listening to the Dharma, may I become the Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Abandon evil doing. Practice virtue well. Subdue your mind. This is the Buddha's teaching. Like a star, an optical illusion, or a flame, a magical illusion, a dewdrop or a bubble, like a dream, a flash of lightning or a cloud, so should one consider all compounded things. By this merit may we attain omniscience and overcome our enemy, our harmful deeds. May beings buffeted by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death be liberated from the ocean of existence. The Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavans dwelling on Master Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavans absorbed in the concentration of the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, looked upon the very practice, the profound perfection and wisdom, and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then to the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara: how should any son of lineage train wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection and wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of lineage or daughter lineage who wishes to practice the activity, the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this, correctly repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it's not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Taya to Om, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi, Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train a profound perfection of wisdom like that, Then the Bhagwan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Bodhisattvacharyavatara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagwan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavatri-putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed how the praise has spoken by the Bhagavan. The praise to Manjushri. Homage to my Guru and protector Manjushri, who holds to his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of the seeing of all things as they are, whose understanding shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of a father for his only son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and frees us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields the sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever its sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of all ignorance, you whose princely body is adorned with the 112 marks of a Buddha, who has completed the 10 stages achieving the highest perfections of a Bodhisattva, who has been pure from the beginning. I bow down to you, Manjushri. Om Rapatsanadi, with the brilliancy of wisdom, O compassionate one, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. By the virtue of offering to you assembly of Buddhas, visualized before me, this mandala built on a base, resplendent with flowers, saffron water and incense, adorned with Mount Meru and the 4 continents, as well as the sun and the moon. May all sentient beings share in its good effects. Please enjoy and bless me and all sentient beings to be released from the 3 poisonous minds, for I am offering without attachment my body, enemies, friends, and strangers, and all possessions which are the objects of my greed, ignorance, and hatred. O holy and venerable Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakama wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakamne Yatayami. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Gurus.
Thank you very much. We'll just spend a few moments settling our mind, as we did last week, just considering how if our mind is involved with our usual push and pull of daily activities, particularly those that are motivated by desire and hatred and so forth, it's necessary to at least loosen those minds and cast them adrift if we possibly can. So we can initially do this by focusing on the breath. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama recommended in the meditation I led last week, we can do this by merely observing 21 cycles of the breath coming in and the breath going out, counting as 1. And because the mind can't have 2 modes of apprehension simultaneously, especially when they're contradictory, it's natural that our mind will settle just by merely focusing on the breath in this way. And now, without any break in our concentration, simply now allow our mind not to dwell on anything that has happened in the past, nor chase after things that might happen in the future, but rather simply leave our mind vivid without any constructions, just as it is. By remaining in this way, we understand that the mind, like a mirror, is such that any conception is capable of appearing under certain circumstances, like reflections. For the entity of the mind has a nature of mere luminosity and knowing, mere experience. Now it's necessary to form a virtuous motivation, mainly compassion, altruism, wishing to help others. This is because when receiving teachings, it's necessary to have the correct attitude. So at the beginning of his commentary to a guide to a Bodhisattva's way of life, His Holiness recommended that it is not practicing the Dharma properly to listen with the intention of gaining material advantage or reputation. Nor should our goal be a higher rebirth in the next life. For example, as a celestial being or a powerful human being. Nor should we be wishing only for our own liberation from samsara. This is an attitude we should reject. Instead, we should listen to the teachings with the determined wish to attain the state of omniscience for the sake of all beings who are infinite in number. To achieve this goal, it is necessary to practice the profound and vast path described in our text, Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This text condenses the Buddha's 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. Everything we need can be found here. So if we maintain our motivation in this way, everything we do will become, all our positive actions will become causes for supreme enlightenment. So with that, we begin the session. We're dealing still with the heading, training in the morality that accomplishes the welfare of all sentient beings. And this has its own 3 subdivisions: diligence in the welfare of others, the action of gathering others without incurring a fault, and protecting sentient beings' minds and training in the action of not incurring fault. So referring to the first, diligence in the welfare of others, this pertains to verse 84, which is considered in 2 parts. For 84, 8 lines A, B. When this is well understood, I should always strive for the welfare of others. And 84, C, D. The far-reaching far-seeing masters of compassion permit to this end that which is proscribed. So, in the first line, the when this is well understood indicates the material which we were exploring last week concerning the need to practice the deed that is the greatest good, unless there is specific reason for practicing a smaller or lesser good deed. So we looked at this in some detail because it raised some very interesting conjectures, really, about how best to act in particular situations. So it gave us a lot of material to work with. So an example would be practicing generosity in the form of offering food in order to ensure that a particular sentient being's safety, perhaps they are starving, is more appropriate in that moment than emphasizing to them the need to practice pure ethics. Even though generally speaking, as we indicated last week, the practice of ethics is said to be a greater virtue than the practice of generosity. So clearly there's a time and a place for these things. So Geshe Doga says, quote, practicing morality in the sequence of the 6 perfections would genuinely be a greater virtue than generosity. However, when there is a greater purpose for practicing generosity to benefit others, then one should not pass up this opportunity in favor of the practice of morality. So clearly this is an example or an illustration. To understand this more deeply, Geshe Doga asked us to examine how we might estimate or come to a determination of the nature of our motivation in that moment. Geshe Doga says, if one were to practice morality with a self-interest, then if an opportunity arose to practice generosity with total dedication for the benefit of others, then the practice of generosity now would be of greater virtue than the practice of morality, which is contrived or stained with mere personal interest. So you can see here that the motivation on the part of the doer is of major significance. In other words, it's better to practice generosity with a pure mind than it is ethics with an impure mind, one coloured, that is, by self-interest. So this is also to be brought into play when we consider how we might engage. This is because an impure, and sort of goes without saying, that an impure practice of ethics will benefit neither the other nor ourselves. However, if our practice of ethics can be pure, then not only will the purpose of others be achieved, but our own purpose will also be fulfilled, albeit naturally, as a spontaneous corollary, as it were. So Gelt Subje's commentary introduced the meaning in the form of introducing a query which went, Bodhisattvas strive to always abide in working for others on the basis of having understood what needs to be practiced and what needs to be abandoned. But since they need to engage into a variety of actions to achieve the welfare of others, do not they receive faults? So this is a really interesting question. There is no argument that bodhisattvas do need to engage in a variety of actions to achieve the welfare of others. This is what we've been called upon to do. And it's a variety of actions required because sentient beings' situations and sentient beings' needs are so vastly different and so intricately particular to their own circumstances. So one size does not fit all. We can't have a cookie cutter mentality here. We have to be able to look directly into the actual situation before us. Gelt Subje's question swings on an implication, one that might well arise in the domain of our lived everyday lives. What if sometimes those very actions aimed or intended to achieve the welfare of others nonetheless entail or involve executing a deliberately executed fault? For example, what if in our practice of generosity of saving lives, we might, for very particular reasons, see the need to take one? So I'm proceeding very carefully here, and I want you to listen very carefully because the stakes of misunderstanding these points are quite high. So there is a classic example to illustrate this kind of scenario. It's of the Buddha in a former lifetime as a bodhisattva who killed one person in order to save 499. At the time, he was a captain of a ship carrying 500 merchants, one of whom was planning to murder everyone on board that ship in order to plunder their goods. As a merchants, they were carrying, vast amounts of wealth. And this account is given in the Upaya Kausalya Sutta. And this can be translated as the Sutra of Skillful Means or the Sutra or Skill in Means. So that title is very significant here because that's what we're talking about. And I'm going to read the Sutra quotation at some length because it gives the entire account in very beautiful detail. Then the Lord again addressed the Bodhisattva Janatara, son of the family. Once upon a time, long before the thus come one, the worthy, the fully perfected Buddha, Dipankara, there were 500 merchants who set sail on the high seas in search of wealth. Among the company was a doer of dark deeds, a doer of evil deeds, a robber, well trained in the art of weaponry, who had come on board that very ship. He thought, I will kill all these merchants when they have completed their business and have done what they set out to do. Take all the possessions and go to Jumbo continent. Son of the family, then the merchants completed their business and set about to depart. No sooner had they done so Then this deceitful person thought, now I will kill all these merchants, take all their possessions, and go to Jambu continent. The time has come. At that time, among the company on board was a captain named Great Compassionate. While Captain Great Compassionate slept on one occasion, the deities who dwelt in that ocean showed this to him in a dream. Amongst this ship's company is a person named so-and-so, of such and such a sort of physique, of such and such a garb, complexion and shape, a robber, mischievous, a thief of other people's property. He is thinking, I will kill all these merchants, take all their possessions and go to Jambu continent. To kill these merchants would create formidable evil karma for that person. Why so? These 500 merchants are all progressing towards supreme right and full awakening. If he should kill these bodhisattvas, the fault, the obstacle caused by the deed would cause him to burn in the great hells for as long as it takes each one of these bodhisattvas to achieve supreme right and full awakening consecutively. Therefore, Captain, think of some skill in means to prevent this person from killing the 500 merchants and going to the great hells because of this deed. Son of the family. Then the great compassionate one awoke. He considered what means there might be to prevent that person from killing the 500 merchants and going to the great hells. Several days passed with the winds adverse to sailing to Jambu continent. During those 7 days, he plunged deep into thought, not speaking to anyone. He thought, there is no means to prevent this man from slaying the merchants and going to the great hells, but I will kill him. And he thought, if I were to report this to the merchants, they would kill and slay him with angry thoughts, and all would go to the great hells themselves. And he thought, if I was to kill this person, I would likewise burn in the great hells for 100,000 eons because of it. Yet I can bear the experience of pain in the great hells, that this person not slay these 500 merchants and develop so much evil karma. I will kill this person myself. Son of the family. Accordingly, the great compassionate protected those 500 merchants and protected that person from going to the great hells by deliberately stabbing and slaying that person who was a robber with a spear, with great compassion and skill in means. And all among the company completed their business, and each went to his own city. Son of the family, at that time, in that life, I was none other than the Captain Great Compassionate. Have no second thoughts or doubt about this point. The 500 merchants on board are the 500 bodhisattvas who are to nirvanize to supreme right and full awakening in this fortunate eon. Son of the family, for me, samsara was curtailed for 100,000 eons because of that skill in means and great compassion. And the robber died to be reborn in a world of paradise. Son of the family, what do you think of this? Can curtailing birth and death for 100,000 eons with that skill in means and that great compassion be regarded as the Bodhisattva's obstacle caused by past deeds? Do not view it in that way. It should be regarded as his very skill in means. So in this way, we arrive at the second half of verse 84, line CD, which is the far-seeing masters of compassion permit to this end that which is proscribed. And the Padmakara translation reads, "The fasting masters of compassion permit to this end that which is prescribed." That's the same. So Gyaltsabje's articulates clearly how these lines supply us with the necessary and correct answer to his own question just raised. He says, "The compassionate Buddhas also see directly the phenomena, hidden very far in the future. Out of this knowledge, they permit the 7 non-virtuous actions of body and mind, which are prohibited for hearers and self-liberators who work primarily for their own purpose, for bodhisattvas when necessary. As a result, bodhisattvas do not incur a fault, but for them it becomes a great accumulation when they engage in these actions." End of quote. So immediately, I ask us to notice, I'm sure you have, that this prohibition of the first 7 non-virtuous actions pertaining to body and speech is categorically applied to hearers and solitary realizers, those who only work for their own purpose. Yet it is not necessarily prohibited when applied to bodhisattvas, whose sole goal is to benefit or fulfill the purpose of others, not themselves. And you'll also notice, and again, this is very significant, that this permission, if you like, to step outside the prohibition is not extended under any circumstances to include the 3 non-virtuous actions, namely those pertaining to mind: covetousness, aversion, and incorrect or wrong views. The reason is, does anyone have any ideas? The reason why we can not exclude these 3 under any conditions? It's because they are, oh, Stephen, go ahead.
Oh, I'll just
Thank
take a
you.
shot in the dark
Yes.
here.
Why not?
Thank you. Well, first of all, they affect only oneself, I would guess, negatively by entertaining those non-virtues. There could be no benefit that I could imagine in having those negative minds.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very good. Does anyone have any other things I'd like to add on? My answer to that was that they are afflictions, examples of very problematic states of mind which can't, under any circumstances, as Stephen has just sort of eloquently put, be considered advantageous or beneficial for that person or anyone else who might be the result of that action. And if we could say that having a mind of covetousness or sort of aversion was somehow permitted, then what would it mean to be a bodhisattva under those circumstances? We have a bodhisattva with a bad mind. I mean, where's the bodhisattva in that scenario? It's incompatible. So this is a critical question to keep in mind. Bodhisattvas are always to act with pure motivation, driven by love, compassion, and wisdom, understanding the nature of things. This means not just sometimes, but always. So, to reapproach the story of the captain and the merchants, out of the great force of compassion, and in order to save the intense suffering that the intending thief and murderer would incur as a karmic consequence of killing so many, amongst whom were many bodhisattvas, the Buddha in that early incarnation made the determination to kill the man himself. And thus, and in Geshe Doga's own words, because Geshe Doga also recounts this story in brief, he took upon himself the action of taking the life of the evildoer. It is said that, Geshe Doga continued, instead of creating negative karma, the captain's act became a means for him to accumulate a great deal of merit, to lessen in his time in samsara by many eons. The benefit was to protect the 499 merchants from imminent death and protect the evildoer person from incurring negative karma. So if this is the case, we are left understandably wondering if it means that any bodhisattva can therefore engage in negativity with the sole purpose of benefiting others. And the answer is, Stephen shaking his head, so I take that to be a no. It's a emphatic no. No. Why? Because only a bodhisattva, particularly endowed with high realizations and in clairvoyance, is deemed suitably equipped. Those lower bodhisattvas, without such awareness and special powers, are not permitted to engage in such activities. And this would presumably include ourselves. This is a point I'm really wanting to emphasize here. I'm not giving you permission to run out there and do something drastic and terrible. We might, in that case, rather than be performing a virtuous act, even if that was our intention, be making a grievous mistake and causing suffering and misfortune in ways that were simply not intended. We just don't have the scope, the wherewithal to ascertain the impact of our act in terms of its karmic consequences. So this means that we reinvoke the need that came up in the earlier verse of having to have a long view. We have to have an expansive view of these situations. Geshe Doga gave, and as do the other commentators of this verse, another account, which is of a Brahmin son, Karma Jungwa. And in this story, the Brahma's son had adopted the practice of abstaining completely from sexual intercourse. For 12 years, he practiced chastity, but there was a young maiden whose life was endangered because of a condition that would be cured only by sexual intercourse. Apparently, this is Geshe Doga's account, with this condition, if sexual intercourse was not done, the lady would have died. So out of great compassion for this young maiden, he broke his vow of chastity to save her life. End of quote. So again, this story is not granting permission to give up ordination vows on a mere whim of someone needing to have sex with a monk or a nun, presuming we're an ordained person. Geshe Doga says, quote, for a lower vehicle practitioner, sexual activity would be a misdeed, but when engaged by a bodhisattva with the intention to protect someone from imminent death, it becomes means to accumulate great merit. So it's exactly the same structure we can see as the other account. And Geshe Doga adds, these are particular examples from accounts in the past, and there are likely other accounts of stealing and lying, etc., done solely for the benefit of others, out of compassion. So I'm just thinking my own example here, just off the top of my head. We might choose to steal an armory of weapons that we find locked in a cupboard of someone who has a reputation for carrying out violent deeds. And so we steal those weapons in order to stop them being used. It's on one level an act of theft, but it's also, from the perspective of the Bodhisattva, an act of great virtue. So Kunzang Pelden says of this young Brahmin, he also gives the same accounts, and the ship captain who killed the evildoer. It is said that by their actions, both these bodhisattvas gained a degree of merit that otherwise would have taken many kalpas to accumulate. End of quote. That this issue of when to step outside prescribed actions is potentially very provocative and prone to severe misunderstandings. Again, we're being asked to take direct responsibility for our own actions, not just in an immediate or superficial sense, but in a deep sense, which involves, as these carefully selected canonical stories make clear, a reliable ability on the part of the Bodhisattva to consider, as I mentioned before, the longer view, as well as understanding the shorter view, the immediate circumstances. They knew exactly what precept it was that they were going to exceed and why. So we must ask ourselves, do we or can we proceed in this way? And such involves honestly looking into ourselves to estimate our level of realizations. Therefore, when Shantideva says the fast-seeing masters of compassion permit to this end that which is proscribed, prohibited, we shouldn't apply this permission to perform what has been prescribed to ourselves unless we've really realistically determined that we are in fact qualified, not just in imaginational terms, imaginary terms, but in fact, in reality. As we quoted earlier, Gyaltsabje notes that a bodhisattva is deemed qualified if they are no longer working for their own purpose. So the question is, how many of our actions can be seen to be no longer working for our own purpose? For most of us, we're mixing our actions with our own purpose, our own needs all the time, even when we're attempting to be compassionate and so forth. So these are all issues here. So it's only when we can put aside completely working for our own interests that we will not incur a fault, but a great accumulation when we engage in such actions. And this is exemplified by the account of the captain on the ship. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama gives some examples when he looks at this verse of the way in which even teachers are prone to mixing their Dharma activities with their own self-interests. He says that even a great Lama on his teaching throne is prone to pride and arrogance. My, oh my, I must be an impressive teacher. Look, I have thousands of disciples. Thinking in such an inflated way, such a teacher might not even see the need to pay respect to their own teachers. The reason being that they might consider themselves even superior to their own teachers. So these are all things to bear in mind. So these thoughts conveniently lead us to the next verse. So the heading, the action of gathering others without incurring a fault. This is divided into two subcategories, gathering with the mundane and gathering with the Dharma. Gathering with the mundane has three further subdivisions: the difference between offering food and not offering food. Secondly, do not harm the body for small actions. And thirdly, explaining the time and necessity for offering the body. So, the difference between offering food and not offering food refers to verse 85. I should divide my food amongst those who have fallen to lower realms. I should divide my food amongst those who have fallen to the lower realms, those without protectors, and practitioners, and eat merely what is sufficient for myself. Except for the 3 robes, I may give away all. So the meaning here is explicit. Gyaltsabje says, while using food, share with those fallen into the wrong direction, animals and hungry ghosts, with the protectorless, the sick, and with those who practice pure action and abide in austerities, if they are there as well. Kunsang Pelden elaborates. He says, when one is living in the solitude of mountains, for instance, whatever alms one has gathered should be shared with these 3 categories of beings: those who have fallen into the lower realms, such as animals, like birds and dogs, those who have no protection, like beggars, and those who have engaged in the outer and inner yogic disciplines, namely solitary meditators. So for this reason, Geshe Doga recommends that we separate our food into sequential portions before eating. We sort of pre-allocate it proportionately. He says, in the normal practice of eating, a fully ordained monk separates some of their food, offers it to the objects of refuge, then a portion to the hungry ghosts, and a portion to the animals, and dedicates it. In this way, one actually divides the food to be consumed with the intention to offer it to others as well. End of quote. So it would seem to be the case that if we can't carry this portioning out physically, one should at least do it in imagination. Perhaps there are no animals present or starving people present, for example, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't consider them and offer them a portion of our food through the power of our imaginations. Clearly, there's a difference between offering actual food and offering imaginary food or food in imagination. So we really do need to assess how best to distribute our food and consider it to belong to others in this way. It's very special. So in relation to one's own share, Kunsang Pelden recommends, in addition, one should offer, he recounts the same ground, one should offer the first part of one's own share to the 3 jewels and ignore one's likes and dislikes. One should take just enough to sustain one's body, dedicating the leftovers and donating them to the spirits. For if one eats too much, one will be heavy and dull, and if one eats too little, one will be weak and unable to practice virtue. And so Gyaltsabje likewise makes the same point by quoting Nagarjuna's The Precious Garland, which says, it is appropriate for oneself to measure everything. This is including food. We have to be measured. Such, of course, works as a powerful injunction against gluttony. I've used the word gluttony deliberately. In our current consumer culture, with its conspicuous technology of conspicuous rampant consumption, my house is better than yours, my jacket is better than yours, my education's better than yours, not to mention my Air Jordans are better than yours, seems to prevail the ethos about our world, doesn't it? So I was just sort of thinking about the picking some conspicuous examples of conspicuous consumption here, and I came upon Drake's, the rappers, ownership of a pair of solid gold OVO X Air Jordans, price $2 million. Made in the USA in 2016. And these examples would be laughable, and I notice we're laughing, if they weren't also extremely real. How many people could be fed? I'm trying to bring it back to Shantideva, for 2,000, how many again? It was $2 million. What merit, what good works, what good deeds could we do with $2,000? Not given to our personal shoes, but to those in need. So we mightn't operate ourselves on such a grand scale, but the lesson is the same. The point is the same. Vanity, our sort of need to decorate ourselves with any number of pretty things until it's encumbered and weighed down by them, is almost a compulsive need in our culture that we have to be very aware of. So clearly these restrictions of giving were also being specifically focused upon the Sangha in Shantideva's verse, because he refers to not being required to give away one's 3 robes, referring to the tunic, the upper robe, and the patched shawl. These shouldn't be given away to even beggars. I mean, not even beggars there, but under no circumstances are they needed to be given away. And this was decreed by the Buddha. In the Bodhisattva Pratamoksha, it said, "Do not give away the Dharma robes, for if you have less than the required 3, on what basis can you practice pure conduct?" So it's kind of the minimal possessions needed in order to practice pure conduct, at least to be clothed and protected in this way. So the main point, of course, is that all other, as Shantideva says, all other possessions are suitable to be given away. So in our own secular case, we're being asked to examine whether we are hoarding goods or sharing them with others in appropriately helpful ways. So this is something to always keep in mind, isn't it? So the next heading, do not harm the body for small actions. This is the second of our 3 subheadings under the heading training in the morality that accomplishes the welfare of sentient beings. And it pertains to verse 86, which reads, "This body, which is being used for the sacred Dharma, should not be harmed for only slight benefit. By my behaving in this way, the wishes of all beings will be quickly fulfilled." Kunzang Pelden puts the point clearly, even bluntly. He says, at the present moment, when one is a novice bodhisattva, one should not damage one's body, cutting off one's hand, for example, for some altruistic but trivial reason. Again, these are sensitive topics and we have to navigate them with some care and precision. So the emphasis here is on giving them away or giving part of the body away for some trivial reason. This implies that in circumstances deemed non-trivial, there may be a case to damage one's body in order to benefit others. Even in ordinary secular terms, we find inspiring stories of those who do this. And you think of parents, for example, who donate a kidney to their child so that they will have the chance of surviving a serious illness. So I want to mention here that a local story that appeared the other day. In Laylaw, an outer Sydney suburb, a neighbour ran into a burning house next door. The house next door was burning in order to save children whom he could hear crying out for help. As it turns out, the father of the children was also in the house, and it said that he obstructed the young man who was attempting to break into the house to save the children. And the young man went into the house several times, managing to carry the children out as he went, and he had to deal with this man trying to stop him from doing so. So the backstory is that this was apparently, I'm using, it's probably going to be a very major legal case, I'm using the word apparently deliberately, a scene of domestic violence. The father had apparently planned to kill himself and possibly the children with him, and had lit the fire in order to carry this out. So it was, a domestic violence scenario, possibly. So the point I'm making, however, is not about him. It's about the young man called Jared Hawkins, who smashed down the front door and rushed into a burning house to rescue 4 young children. And he did this without any concern or thought for his own body or his own safety. It's reported that he went back into the house 2 more times where the temperatures were as high as 700 degrees Celsius. And he was doing all this before the emergency services could arrive. Once police and firefighters were on the scene, he still attempting to help, he attempted to rescue the rest of the family from the back of the house. As it turns out, 2 young boys and a baby did die in the fire. What I found even more amazing, wonderfully amazing about this man's incredible courage and concern for others was that following the scene, when he was interviewed in the street by the media who had gathered, of course, at this event, his thought was still for others. He said, "It sounds silly, but I didn't even think about it. I just sprinted over and was smashing down the front door so I could get in." So he said to the media, "Thank you for everyone who had arrived to help, and please just look after each other," he said. "I hope the police and firefighters can rest easy knowing they had done the best they physically could." So he was even concerned for the other police officers who were also risking danger in those moments. So if this is the courage, and I'm using these words advisedly, of an ordinary person, what need to mention the bravery and courage of a bodhisattva who has thoroughly trained to sacrifice, to give away their own bodies without a skerrick of attachment or doubt if the occasion should arise. So I'm not saying this young man wasn't a bodhisattva, by the way, but I'm just saying to all extents and purposes, he was an ordinary bloke from next door. That was the purpose of that story. But I'm now saying for a bodhisattva, how much more must be the case? So regarding this ability to give away one's body upon a call to do so, we find many, many references in the sutras to support this action. So, for example, in the Noble Multitude of Jewels Sutra, it says, quote, "If a monk living in a wilderness region who is an ordinary person and who has not yet attained the result," higher realizations, I think it must mean there, "should be approached by fierce wild animals, he should not be frightened or afraid. And he should arouse in his mind as follows: when I entered into this wilderness life, I gave up my body and my life. Here, I would not be frightened or afraid, but rather I would arouse loving kindness, give up aversion, and remove fear. If, when I had done this, these fierce wild animals should kill me and eat me, then I should arouse in my mind as follows: it is a gain for me. It is a great gain for me that I will receive the value of this useless body. I cannot satisfy these fierce wild animals by giving them my food, but when they have eaten my flesh, they will feel happy. End of quote. However, if there are still grounds for reserve, if one has not yet developed or adequately developed such stable and powerful virtuous qualities, we must consider or determine, as Shantideva is clearly instructing us to do so, not to give away our bodies or to injure them in any ways while still a novice. Because we rely on our bodies to carry out our deeds in this lifetime. And such a human rebirth as we currently have is difficult to obtain or obtain again. So by giving away this body for trivial purposes, we might be squandering the best chance we've had since beginningless time to practice for the sake of other beings in a kind of consistent and coherent fashion. As Kunsang Pelden says, quote, "For it is with the body that one is to practice the sublime Dharma properly. One should instead take care of this body so that it is able to work for the good of others, eating just enough to fill one's stomach and dressing adequately to keep out the cold without falling into either extreme or excess. One should fulfill the activities of a bodhisattva and, with prayers of aspiration, dedicate the merit to the gaining of omniscience for the benefit of others. If one acts in this way, one's wishes for immediate and ultimate happiness of all beings will be swiftly fulfilled, one after the other." You see here, there's a sort of emphasis on a coherent continuity. So this would be the case from the perspective of this novice bodhisattva. So I think technically you would have to say that a novice bodhisattva would be one who has just entered the path of accumulation and also the path of preparation. So the next heading is the action of gathering others without incurring a fault. We're still under the first subheading, gathering with the mundane, but we're now under a sub-subheading explaining the time and necessity for offering the body. And this refers to verse 87. Those who lack the pure intention of compassion should not give their body away. Instead, both in this and future lives, they should give it to the cause of fulfilling the great purpose. Gyaltsabje comments, although from the very beginning, bodhisattvas have offered everything, including their body, to sentient beings from the depth of their mind. However, if one feels despondent with the prospect of being asked for the flesh of one's body and the like, and generates feeling of regret afterwards and so forth, then until the mind of pure compassion that cherishes other more than oneself has been developed, one should not give this body. So Geshe Doga, in his commentary, zeroes in upon the meaning, although from the very beginning. The Gyaltsabje says, although from the very beginning, bodhisattvas have offered everything. So Geshe Doga says it refers to the time when a trainee first becomes a bodhisattva by entering the path of accumulation. Although bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation and preparation have developed the courageous mind of offering everything for the sake of sentient beings, which would include offering their body and so forth, they are nevertheless still in the preliminary stages of the practices. Because there is a probability that bodhisattvas at the initial levels of practice could feel despondent at the prospect of having others ask for their flesh or body parts and so forth, the practice of offering one's body is not advised. Furthermore, it is possible that one will later feel regret rather than rejoice in giving one's body. So these are really, really important things to take on board. And we might have to consider that in our own cases, we may not even have that foot on the path of accumulation yet. So we're not technically even novice bodhisattvas. So this is putting even more emphasis on the need not to do things foolishly. The emergence or appearance of signs such as regret are a clear indication in themselves that this novice bodhisattva has not yet generated what Gyaltsab has called the pure mind of compassion that cherishes others more than oneself. So just when does this pure mind of compassion arise? Geshe Doga indicates, until the pure mind of compassion that cherishes others more than oneself has been fully developed, refers to the development of ultimate bodhicitta, which is within the mental continuum of those who have reached the first of the 10 grounds and above. Thus, what is being explained here is that until bodhicitta has been fully developed, and this is both in conventional and ultimate senses, one should not give this body. So until one has realized emptiness directly, non-dualistically, in conjunction with having perfectly qualified conventional bodhicitta, one should not give up this body. And if we do attempt before this stage of a supreme being, there is a danger, it's specified, that one's decision might be influenced by Mara or demons. This prospect is explicitly raised by Gyaltsab when he says, this is extensively explained in the Compendium of Sutras, where the untimely offering of one's body is described as the action of Mara. And the actual reference in the Compendium of Trainings is, I'll quote, now the Gagana Sutra says, until untimely expectations are Mara's doing. You shouldn't arouse the thought of giving your body at the wrong time. When you have not even begun to actually have proficiency, you should never give away the body. Therefore, having applied mindfulness in this way, you should protect the body from what stops the full maturation of awakening mind, from delusion, and from what kills your own welfare. You should protect the body for the work it can do and for the benefit of flesh eaters. And then there's another quote embedded in that. For example, just as the roots and seeds and so on of a beautiful medicine tree, even if given away, should be protected from untimely consumption, it's the same with the medicine tree of full awakening. So I was reminded here of the story of Shariputra. In one of Shariputra's prior lives, he was a bodhisattva and was engaging in bodhisattva practices, including giving his own body. And in order to hinder Shariputra's practices, Mara took the form of a Brahmin who approached Shariputra and requested his right arm. Without any hesitation, Shariputra amputated his right arm and offered it to Mara. Since Shariputra had only the left hand remaining, he passed the cut hand to Mara with his left, and Mara took offence. In India, since the left hand is used for cleaning one's rear end, it is considered disrespectful to offer anything with one's left hand. When Shariputra saw Mara's offence, he felt discouraged and thought it impossible to help all sentient beings, and therefore gave up bodhicitta. However, Shariputra was able to enter the path of listeners and eventually became an arhat. So this story is told in the commentary, Shantideva's commentaries, in relation to the 7th verse of chapter 4, if you recall, which read, "Only the omniscient can discern the manner of the action of those who give up the awakening mind, but are freed. It is beyond the scope of ordinary thought." Anyhow, the implication of this account is that Mara deliberately set Shariputra up so that he could forfeit or would forfeit his most precious possession, his Bodhisattva vows. Thus, not just Shariputra, but countless sentient beings were therefore done over, so to speak. That is to say, by subtracting Shariputra's Bodhisattva actions from the universal equation, referring to all of the Bodhisattva actions that Shariputra would have otherwise have gone on to do as a Bodhisattva, Mara achieved his intention of depriving countless sentient beings of happiness. So even if we take this story or adapt it to our own small, mundane level, we can learn from this account by considering that we ourselves might be all too vulnerable to being seduced by the devious cunning of our own afflictions, and thus prove vulnerable to acting unskillfully, even when we might believe that we're inspired by great benevolent motivation, such as that of generosity. In other words, without sufficient wisdom, it is necessary to give cautiously, meaning with due consideration. The point remains, prior to becoming an Arya Bodhisattva, there is no guarantee that we'll be actually able to determine just when the giving of our body will serve as a cause to achieve the greater purpose of this and future lives. And therefore we should aim for higher realization. So you can see very carefully how very carefully these commentaries around these verses are shaped so that we don't run with them too far, take them as a kind of license to permit appalling deeds. Are there any comments as we go? Because they're very provocative stories, aren't they? Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Ross. It is. They are provocative stories, and if I may, I'm thinking a little bit about your situation and the medical miracle that really has allowed you to be here and teach to us. And so it's kind of interesting. There's another sort of case where someone I know well, is in the situation where, um, should I undergo one of a similar analogous type medical procedure or not? And I can see there's some reluctance. And this kind of, to me, this advice here is that you have to be really, really sure,
Mm.
And have, a certain, I guess, a solidity of purpose in order to make a donation like that. I don't know. I'm being vague so as not to identify anyone, but
No, I understand. It's
yeah.
very sensitive issues. Yeah. I think, for me, having my relationship with my teachers and the opportunity of continuing that relationship is incredibly precious. And so I didn't want to let that go easily. But I was also having to consider what it meant to have to let go and what that meant. So I had to also simultaneously come to terms with the prospect of my own fragility and my own death. And that then invoked its own set of questions and requirements, if you like, how best to die. And again, the advice of my teachers was there, how best to die. And so in every way I turned, I found that I'm not saying I had any special ability here, but just that I had riches of information and gifts given to me by my teachers that enabled me to handle each of those situations in various ways. And I think I've recounted the story with you. I'll share it again because it had a huge impact on me. I had been reading about the role of dedication. You know, at the end of life, obviously, your final dedication or the method of it's incredibly significant. What are you dedicating your life towards that you're just about to give up? And all the actions that you performed. And how does one posit one's future rebirth as best one can? And some people say, I'm going to go to this pure realm or that pure realm. All the pure realms look pretty good to me. I don't know how you pick one over another one. So that was confusing. And then there's a question of, you know, which deity to rely upon in those final moments. And of course, one can have your own favorite deity or special deity. But even within that, there are certain practices that one might have to focus upon and so forth. And so in rather bewildered, and I was also exhausted, physically exhausted, I went to see Geshe Doga and I raised that question. You'll probably recall Geshe Doga instructed me to make the same prayer that His Holiness the Dalai Lama makes on a daily basis, which is, may I be reborn wherever it will be of most benefit to sentient beings. And that was, I gave up all of my anxieties about myself at that moment because everything fell into place. That's all that mattered. It wasn't about me at all. It was about if I could serve others in some future time in the best possible way, may I be reborn, may I dedicate to be reborn in that place, in that way. Not knowing what it is, but the impulse is pure. And I could then rest on the impulse with open wings, if you like. There was an incredible freedom there. It relieved me of all of the self-anxieties that I might have. Yeah. So it's also said that the Bodhisattva who has realized direct insight into emptiness is not viewing their body as an inherently possessed object either, because of the depth of their realization. So it means that they can view giving away their body in a way that we can't even begin to consider without having that level of realization. So it's also good to keep those things in mind. So in Shantideva's text, the next sort of sequence of thoughts concerns gathering sentient beings not with food or material things, but with the Dharma. And this is subdivided into three. The physical behavior of an audience that one should not teach, analyzing the distinction of the motivation of a vessel, someone who might receive the teaching, and do not lead those with the wish for the great to the small. So the first one, the physical behavior of an audience that one should not teach. Verse 88. The Dharma should not be explained to those who lack respect, to those who, like sick men, wear cloth around their heads, to those holding umbrellas, sticks, or weapons, to those with covered heads. I'm sure you'll see at a glance the significance of the first injunction, not to teach the Dharma to those who lack respect. It makes enormous good sense. To preach the Dharma or to explain the Dharma to those who lack respect runs significant karmic risks, chief of which is the fact that those listening will utilize the situation, because they're lacking respect, to either dismiss or actively denigrate the teachings on the spot, or store up what they've heard in order to later mock or belittle it, often in front of other people or for other people, for whatever reasons. So YouTube presents many examples of such dismissals of the Dharma. And they're usually grounded upon an impoverished comprehension of even basic principles of Buddhist thought. And in these YouTube videos, Buddhism is being prejudicially twisted into a shape in order to highlight or serve the purpose of highlighting the supposed advantages of another spiritual or another political or another religious tradition. So it's opportunistic. It's a game of one-upmanship. So from a Buddhist viewpoint, to trash Buddhism in this way creates its own karmic imprints that will result in this person giving rise to wrong views, seemingly instinctively in the future. Therefore, the sensitive Buddhist teacher, and that might include ourselves in a quite ordinary social setting, by recognizing these problems, will choose not to teach Buddhist doctrine in such situations, or only in an oblique fashion, such as emphasizing the universal role of compassion. So rather than giving a doctrinal answer, a strict answer, you might simply say, oh, best to love your neighbor as yourself or something like that, so that you kind of take away any wind in their derogatory sails. So Geshe Doga summarizes these points as follows. Those who do not have respect for the Dharma are by default not suitable vessels to receive the Dharma. Furthermore, teaching the Dharma to those who do not respect the teacher or the Dharma would cause them to incur the negativity of disrespecting the Dharma. In this way, rather than bestowing benefit, it becomes for them the cause to experience harm from the negative consequences. So the first part of the explanation, one should not explain the Dharma to those who do not have respect for the Dharma and the teacher, refers to those who do not have minds pure enough to receive the Dharma. End of quote. I think the following lines in Shantideva's verse are more perplexing. At least this is the case until we recognize it in historical cultural terms. In order to receive teachings, one must or should show respect by removing any sign of vanity or arrogance. That is, to wear a hat, particularly a flamboyant one, into a gompa is considered inappropriate because it indicates that one's own ego is placing the adornment on one's crown above that of the Buddha's Upanisha. It's sort of implicit. Or that the teacher may be wearing a ceremonial hat, and with your continuing to wear your own hat in that circumstance, you're implying that your hat is as worthy or as showy as is theirs. So in Indian traditional social terms, these distinct kinds of distinctions are well understood. It is the same logic as taking one's street shoes off before entering the sacred realm of a Buddhist shrine or temple, or even someone else's home, particularly when one has come from a dirty or muddy street. Therefore, we're to take this list in Shantideva's verses indicators of potential disrespect. Therefore, the injunction of the first line would come into play, motivated by physical indicators of inappropriate attitude rather than direct indicators of appropriate attitude. Geshe Doga says unsuitable behaviour include wearing headbands when not sick. This implies, he adds, that while it is permitted to wear a headband because one is not well, Wearing a headband for no particular reason would be a sign of disrespect. Likewise, carrying umbrellas or sticks or weapons, or covering their heads with cloth and so forth are examples of disrespectful conduct when listening to a Dharma teaching. When listening to a Dharma teaching, there's a time and a place for these things. So from this, we can see that wearing a headscarf because one has entirely lost one's hair due to heavy chemotherapy or brain surgery would not be considered a case of disrespect. Also, while in the high mountains, if one met some nomads who are carrying all of their essentials with them on their own bodies, including guns, we wouldn't see that as a sign of disrespect. So there's room for exception, in other words. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, well aware that the Sangha, according to their Vinaya, are not allowed to cover their heads with their zens while listening to a teaching, often gives the audience permission to do exactly that, to cover their heads with their zen. This is to protect them from dangerous exposure to sunlight. So His Holiness passes that permission so that that action can be taken under those circumstances. Geshe Doga likewise has explained that when people attend, for example, the Tara Institute healing group to do their meditations and so forth, there's absolutely no requirement whatsoever that they sit up. They can lie down, they can have a pillow gently placed under their head, they can have support with other pillows or cushions, they can have a blanket to keep them warm and so forth. So the concern there is for them. And so all of these exemptions can be made. So respect is being considered here in a very nuanced and sort of open fashion. From our own sides, preparing ourselves to be suitable to receive teachings is truly valuable. So I'm talking about our own deliberate act of taking off our cap, taking off our shoes and so forth when we enter into the place of teaching, is valuable because it is softening and opening our mind to the specialness and the unique opportunity afforded by that occasion. We're not taking it for granted, in other words. We're ready, we're indicating that we're ready to listen, and we're indicating to ourselves that we're ready to listen in a very particular, clear way. So a charming story. There's been a few stories today. This one is charming, so the other ones were quite thorny, weren't they? Just one story that happened in previous times, says Rinpoche. One day, a disciple named Mem Begawo, who was a doctor, was riding on an elephant, and he met his teacher, Shariputra. Without taking the time to come down slowly from the backside of the elephant, all of a sudden he jumped down when he saw his teacher, Shariputra, like that, with so much devotion and respect. So it's the same for us, isn't it? If we're sitting in a room and suddenly our teacher walks in, we jump up. I'm not saying we're talking about myself here because I'm a student. One jumps up to show respect for that teacher, and then we immediately show them the best chair and invite them to sit. And then if we're lucky, we can even invite them to share some Dharma advice and stuff, or offer food or whatever it is we're doing. Anyway, to get back to this story, afterwards, the disciple was born as a god in the Shura realm. Shariputra checked up after his disciple had passed away, using his psychic powers to find out which realm the disciple had been reborn into. With his power, he realized that the disciple was born in the Shura realm, and so he went there to give the disciple Dharma. he found his disciple, but the disciple had a very different character to what he had had in the previous lifetime. When he saw Shariputra this lifetime, he ran away to enjoy life with his friends and relatives. He had no energy or time to listen to the Dharma. He just left to play with his friends and relatives. Rinpoche continues, so Shariputra didn't get the chance to explain Dharma to him. When he was a human being in his previous life, it was easy because the mind was not distracted by so many objects, and it was easy for the mind to understand the nature of suffering and for the mind renouncing suffering to arise. End of quote. So in another account of the same story, it's noted that the disciple, now reborn in the pure realm, when he first saw his guru, Shariputra, walking towards him on foot, remained seated upon his high throne on the elephant and greeted his teacher from on high. He didn't disalight. And he just merely gestured, apparently. I know this gesture because you see it in car drivers when someone let them give way to them politely as they're turning a corner and they can't be bothered sort of doing anything too dramatic. They sort of go like this with the hand still on the steering wheel just to indicate thank you very much kind of thing as you're turning. Have you seen that look? So here's the disciple who's once devout merely doing that to his teacher while remaining seated upon the elephant. So I think the vulnerability, the fragility of our karmic relationship with our spiritual teachers is hereby illustrated, as is the robust nature of our refuge, for that matter. From this, we can appreciate how even the capacity to see how to show suitable respect for our teacher and the Dharma they impart, it is itself a very precious and rare commodity, one dependent on many favourable conditions assembling together, not the least of which is our obtaining, this time at least, a precious human rebirth. Another aspect of this story is that we only see the need to show respect to our teachers when our conditions are not faring so well. This is sort of riffing on the story of the elephant. When we are on top of the world, on top of our elephant, we see no need to receive the Dharma. We only turn to the Dharma when we're in distress or simply bored. It's coming from somewhere else. So we're trying to open our mind to a kind of genuine freedom to receive the Dharma without the pollutions of our self-interest and our narrow self-motivations. We realize how precious it is. So the next stanza comes under the heading Analysing the Distinction of the Motivation of a Vessel, 89. It's not suitable to follow on. Verse reads, nor to a woman unaccompanied by a man. The vast and profound should not be taught to lesser beings, although I should always pay equal respect to the dharmas of the lesser and higher beings. So this verse is an extension of the last, but it rapidly drops us into several contentious territories. I'm looking at people troubled by contentious territories here. The first line, considered from a contemporary perspective, is certainly, again, provocative, as it is predicated or appears to be predicated on patriarchal attitudes that view women and women's social legitimacy purely in terms of their association, compulsory it seems, with a man. In Batchelor's translation, there is not even a specification of whether or not that man needs to be a family member, a husband or a brother. He simply needs to be a man. The Padmankara translation says, do not teach the vast and the deep to women unescorted. Again, raises all sorts of questions. And the translation direct from the Sanskrit by Kate Crosby and Andrew Skilton, it's often really valuable to refer to this translation because it's the text prior to its translation into Tibetan, says not to give to a woman without a man present. So it doesn't help us in any way to get out of this spot of trouble. So what to do? What to do? Geshe Jumpa Gatso carefully addresses the issues of what we might, considered on the literal basis of the words alone, interpret as a blatant example of sexism. He does this by arguing that we must interpret these words in the context of the ordination vows of monks and nuns who were Shantideva's presumed immediate audience. He says, in this verse, it alludes to certain features of the practice of monks and nuns. In the case of a monk, if a woman does not have a companion, man or woman, he should not explain the Dharma to her in a secluded place, in an intimate setting, because the person teaching has certain precepts to keep, and there is the danger of attachment developing. There is, consequently, a danger of him not being able to keep his precepts. In general, it is not negative for a man and a woman to have sexual relations, but for monks and nuns, it is different, because they have already given their word to keep these precepts, that they will not partake of the pleasures of sex, that they will give up the pleasures of psychic existence. They have taken on that commitment. That is the background against which this point is explained. It is not saying, in general, it is bad to have sexual relations with men and women. So Geshe Doga presents the point similarly, but adds that stresses that the prohibitions are symmetrical, sort of in that they apply to both nuns and monks. Geshe Doga says, with respect to women alone, without their spouse, we need to understand the specific context of the advice, which applies to those presenting the Dharma. For example, it can be very dangerous for their vows for a fully ordained monk to teach a woman why they are alone. Others might also form negative views about the propriety of that. Likewise, if a teacher is a nun, it would be inappropriate if they were to teach a man alone, without their spouse being present. We need to understand that while one gender is mentioned here, it refers equally to the other gender. It is important to understand these points in their proper context, end of quote. Yes, we can appreciate this, but nonetheless, immersed as we are in our current cultural climate, there are many who don't fall into the categories of spousal relationships. Thus, it could conceivably never hope to fulfill the prerequisite conditions for receiving teachings unless embedded or cemented within a larger group setting. How realistic is this? Would a monk, for example, chatting to a single woman alone on his mobile telephone be permissible or not? I just raise that. As a non-Sangha member, referring to myself, it is inappropriate for me to venture further to comment on the way in which the ordination Vinaya works, because this is the select prerogative of ordained monks and nuns. But nonetheless, there are issues floating around. Geshe Jumpa Getso says a little bit further on in his account, quote, when there is a companion present, such as a companion in the discipline, there is no fault. In contrast, when the two are talking together in a public place, like a waiting room, where there are many people and coming and going, the case again is reduced. The case of a fault is reduced. When you take her to your room, close the door, so there is just the two of you, the case against is much greater. If it is your mother, sister, or the like, there is no fault. it is when the woman is not a close relative. So let me add here that similar prohibitions actually exist in the modern workplace. So as a lecturer in the university setting, part of our employment policy was we were not to interview in case of a male lecturer, a single female student in our room alone with the door closed. We were instructed that we should always leave the door open. So my sort of, I'm still mulling over this interpretation because from this perspective, the unaccompanied woman or man, as Geshe-Doga points out, is only significant to the discussion or the moral equation, as it were, in as much as they perform in the eye of the teacher as a potential sexual attractor, an objective or external catalyst for the insurgence of non-virtuous, lustful minds, and thus setting up the conditions for the vows of celibacy to be sullied or even surrendered. However, it is clear from Galt Subje's commentary that the emphasis in this verse concerns discerning who is and who isn't suitable to teach. And this is also reflected in the wording of the heading for the verse, analysing the distinction of the motivation of a vessel. So there's a lot to be explored there. And I think I might stop there for today, because we can go on to look at the other verses in some detail next week. But how do we navigate that verse ourselves? What are the feelings that come to mind? I'm not saying I'm anti what Shantideva said or whatever. I'm just trying to reach a conclusion with which I can sit comfortably, given my own contemporary cultural context, if you like. Yeah. Steve and Brave and Lou, put up your hand as well. Yeah.
Let Lou go first.
All right, Lou.
I was just going to bring up the fact that it almost sounds like the unescorted woman is bringing up feelings in the monk, and essentially he's blaming the woman for his feelings when they're his feelings and his problem. I don't know. It's like transferring my affliction and saying this outside person is the cause of my affliction.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is very unmonk-like.
Yes, I think I was sort of saying the same thing when I said that they were being cast, whether they're male or female, as attractors. That was their problem. They were already always, as you're saying, they're already always attractors merely by being an object that could be objectified by that other person as attractive or an object of lust. And therefore the fault is embedded in their mere appearance there, nothing to do with who they are or their qualities.
Exactly. And it's due to the affliction within the person observing the attractor.
Yeah. So, Stephen, how did you go with it?
Oh, thank you, Ross. So I was just trying to find the passage, but there's something in Geshe Sopa's commentary in the first volume in Steps on the Path to Enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's similar. It's not the same, where we're instructed to hope for a rebirth as a male in order. And so that doesn't really seem fair on the face of it. And the way he explains it, I thought was really quite gentle and compassionate, in that he states that at that time, in that culture, it was most propitious to be born as a male, in order to have all of the resources, because that's just the way the culture was set up. And many more monasteries than nunneries and so on, and just everything was so difficult. Not that many obstacles still remain. But he explained it that way, that instruction was for that time, for that cultural context, and that it was just the culture, and there was no intrinsic advantage or disadvantage at being born male or female or whatever. So that was just kind of a similar thing.
That raises the question, to what extent are we empowered as contemporary practitioners, and particularly those dealing with this classical text, to what extent are we empowered to reconceive the way in which certain points are interpreted, or not adjust them, but somehow inflect them in a way that enables them to sit comfortably in our current cultural circumstances? Yeah. Taylor.
One
Thank
thing
you.
that just comes to mind is two things that still exists in some countries. In India, having been to a doctor or a hospital in Dharamsala, the doctor asked me where if I brought a man with me or a woman with me to the doctor, because he would not examine me without. But then also, in this day and age, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it protects the monks and the nuns. We have so many issues of people claiming that they, were abused or by any priests or teachers or doctors. I don't see anything wrong with it's probably safe to protect themselves, protect their, as I say this, their reputation, because but it is probably good to maintain that.
Yes.
So I'm okay with that. I'm not offended by it. So.
No, that's good. Yeah. And also, if I was knowing that injunction's there, I would not accept an invitation to go into, for example, a nun's private room with the door closed for whatever reason, because it, as you're suggesting, implicitly compromises her. And it might just, as was said in the commentary, even if it's just by virtue of someone else seeing you go into her room and closing the door, that casts a kind of potential shadow on a situation which may in fact be completely pure and completely innocent. However, it has a potential to be misunderstood or misread, and therefore it compromises, in this case, a nun, by allowing myself as a male practitioner to enter the room in that way. So out of respect, I would continue to conversation outside, and I'd rather stay here and continue the conversation outside. So the discretion is really important, isn't it? I think that's the same logic behind the university door policy too. It's to protect the student, but it's also to protect the academic as well. It's these are sensible policies in the workplace for the same reason. Yeah. So I've spent a little bit of time on these because I've noticed in my cultural travels that some people do dismiss Shantideva entirely on the basis of these several references in his composition. They say, oh, yes, Shantideva said this, therefore Shantideva is a patriarchal person to be totally rejected and let's move on. We can't do that. Shantideva is far too precious to somehow dismiss, especially in total. So it's really up to us to find ways of working with the finer details. And I think it's inevitable that these sorts of conversations are going to come up as huge cultural transmission occurs from the classic sort of South Asian setting to a globalized sort of world economy, the cultural economy that we currently have. So thank you very much. I might ask Lou to lead us in the concluding prayers. So thank you, Lou.
There was one more question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go
It
ahead.
was Tenzin's question. No, she
Is
wants
it
not.
is it Jay? Is it? No,
No, not me. It
Oh,
was Tenzin. I just noticed.
sorry. Go ahead.
I
Yeah,
need to speak up for women. I am,
yeah.
I had my hand up. I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
I guess it
Go
wasn't
ahead.
seen or.
No, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah.
That's all right. Well, I just wanted to say in our Zen tradition, the first great effort of Buddha's teaching is to not create negative karma or create situations that can create negative karma. So it's just intelligent. Leave the door open, talk in the hallway, get your friend to come to the doctor with you.
Yeah.
Secondly, I just wanted to say that women are more susceptible to difficulties in any culture, even 2024. It doesn't matter. Women get raped. Women get treated very, very badly and very differently than a man with lots of big muscle and who's 6'4" and she's 5'8" or whatever. It's just how it is. But it doesn't mean we can't be deeply spiritual and practice differently, profoundly, deeply, as a man does in their way. The sex organs don't really, they do, they're different. They make us different beings. But once you give up that stuff, it doesn't matter anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that.
I think it's very important. Thank you. I think the lamas, our classical lamas, are also much more relaxed too, because they recognize that within so-called Western context, there isn't those stricter prohibitions against women being unescorted in public. Like in some countries, when women weren't allowed to drive, as we know, in Iran, weren't allowed to actually drive cars, had to. And so these sorts of conditions are softening up and in a good way, and it's recognized. And so changes are occurring as well. But the issue of vulnerabilities is very, very real. And one has to bear that in mind, even on a daily basis, unfortunately. So there's a wisdom in being wise there. Yeah. So Lou, thank you very much.
Dedication prayers from Shantideva. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. May all the pains of living creatures, weapon solely upon myself, and through the might of the Bodhisattva Sangha, may all beings experience happiness. May the teachings which are the sole medicine for suffering and the origin of every joy be maturely supported and honored and abide for a very long time. I prostrate to Manjughosha, through whose kindness wholesome minds ensue, and I prostrate to my spiritual masters, through whose kindness I develop. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel of bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen never diminish but increase more and more. May my venerable Lama's life be firm, his white divine action spread in the 10 directions, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish granting of this fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, the incomparable, kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech. May all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. In a land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. all-powerful Chen Rezik, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until psychic existence is ended. Long light prayers. Pray for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Fearless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, together with your lineage, all the ops of refuge of the infinite lands, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. And holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for welfare of destroys one's teachings and mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of 3 jewels, the great waves of the mind generation of the children of the victorious ones, with a smile of a new reincarnation, swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
So thank you very much for everyone attendance, and enjoy your week. I'll be